Okay, in this demonstration I've got a little sample here, and I'm going to show you how to do what's called a narrow hem or a chiffon hem without using the hemmer foot. You've got one that came with your machine, and your manual will show you how to use that. I find them difficult, especially if you have something cut on a curve, because as you cross the bias area of the fabric, it wants to slip out of that hemmer foot. So I have found this is a more controlled method. Alright, so on this side of my pattern fabric, I have my hemline marked, and I've given myself about a 1-inch hem. That way it's easier to get a hold of all this to make the fold. That's where I want my hem to finish. So my first fold is going to be just a little bit of 1/8 of an inch away from that. And let's say this is the outside of our garment. I'm actually going to flip this over to the other side of the garment, the inside, and so I see where my line is folding it up, so I'm going to roll back off of that by about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to stitch extremely close to my folded edge. Your stitch length could be about a 3, and as you go around the curve, let that lift up and ruffle right there, and just keep your stitching right by the folded edge. Let's get around here real quick. Try and hold that steady. Sorry, I've got somebody holding the camera for me this morning. He's got a bit of a little cold, if you can hear. Alright. So you would do this all the way around the garment. Then the next step is to actually trim. Can we see this? Why don't you kind of lift the camera up this way to show up and about. Are we getting the frame? Alright, so I'm trimming this as close as I can to my stitching. I am just sliding my scissors right under the fabric, keeping the bottom part of my scissors against my table. That way my cuts are very controlled. Trying to get it as close as I can to that edge. And you would do this all the way around the bottom of the garment. So now can you kind of zoom in a little bit? Let's get in the light here. So can you see it's a very narrow edge? Good. Okay, then one more turn. You will see stitching on the outside of the garment. Get my needle in there, and this time it's just going to be a very tiny little hem. On the inside of the garment, you'll see the 2 rows of stitching. And at this point, this should be right about where your mark was made for your hemline. So the hemmer foot on your machine would actually make the 2 folds all in one, and you would just be doing the 1 row of stitching. But it's really a challenge to get that fabric to stay in that roller. I've been sewing for a long time, and I too had some difficulty with that. So go ahead and zoom back in here, Dakota. Come closer. Alright, very good. So that's what the inside looks like. And of course you'd be using matching thread to your fabric, so it really wouldn't be seen as much. Looks like 2 rows. From the outside we have 1 row of stitching. It's very narrow to the edge. Just a nice little press on that will take care of any of your marks and put a nice finish on the end of a hem. Alright, that's it. You can push end.